Welcome back, everyone. Well, believe it or not, we're going to be talking about Windows XP once more. And I say once more because I already filmed this video like 2 hours ago, but for some reason my microphone wasn't working, so I have to re-record the audio while keeping the same video. So I'm going to try my best to break it down, but Windows XP is turning 19 years old this year, which is pretty insane. Some of you people who are watching this video may be younger than the actual version of software that we're talking about, which is pretty crazy. Now, Windows XP was the successor of pretty much Windows 2000, which was originally going to be planned for the business market. Now, I'm reading a lot of this from Wikipedia and also from fandom.com, so shout out to both of them. And actually, Windows ME or Windows ME was a previous version that a lot of people were using before. And apparently, I don't know too much about Windows ME or Windows ME. That was a home version of software that Microsoft was really pushing. But Windows XP was one of those that are pretty much a lockdown and just kind of has a stereotype of being one of the best versions of software ever released from Microsoft. And actually, Windows XP got an extended support in 2014, and it really didn't even stop getting support until January of 2020, which is insane. And actually, in China, a lot of people still use Windows XP, which is pretty impressive. And in January, they finally cut ties with this year, which is so insane. The fact that this thing got those many years of software support is crazy to me. And Windows XP, when I was messing with it earlier today, it doesn't feel that old and it doesn't feel that bad. And obviously now I'm kind of talking in past tense because I'd already recorded this audio, but it's still pretty crazy that a ton of people, even maybe in 2020, are still using this software. And I think it has a lot to do with probably a lot of businesses that maybe use Windows XP and they just never updated just because who God knows what. But they kept on it, and Windows XP is still pretty impressive. Now, last year, I also talked about Windows XP, and I broke down basically the installation process and all that, and I had a VirtualBox set up on my machine, which, if you guys don't know, is pretty much just a software that you can load up other OSs on and other operating systems, so you can install Linux on a MacBook without having to, port everything over and dual boot and all that. You don't have to deal with that. So I use VirtualBox a lot. You can install Windows XP through it, which is really, really cool. Now, the user interface of this thing, once you get past all the boot up logo and all that, is pretty similar to a lot of different softwares that are still out in the game right now. And obviously, Windows XP really didn't, invent the desktop experience or anything like that. But when you look at this and you look at all the other manufacturers who are dropping all OSs, and even Windows 10 now, there are so many similarities. And with Windows XP, it really doesn't even look that bad. Yeah, it looks kind of dated, but it doesn't look like Windows 95 dated, you know what I mean? It still looks pretty good for the most part, which is something that I really, really do like for Windows. Now, when I was going through the whole entire process and everything, I was like, man, this thing is crazy. I played with it last year too, but the fact that, it's not even that slow, it's not even that buggy, for the most part, it's pretty decent for a ton of people and for a ton of uses, and I can see why a lot of people are probably still using it. And one of the things that I was actually kind of surprised about was actually kind of the things you were able to edit still within the specific software. Now, that might seem kind of weird, but you're able to still change the desktop and all that. But what's really interesting is when you double tap on the home screen, the amount of features and just little tidbits added since the specific version of software is pretty crazy. You only had a couple of things that you can choose from when you tapped on the screen, but now we have a ton of different options when we just tap on the screen. So even a small little change like that even offers a ton of different things. Also, another thing, I was able to connect to the internet through this VirtualBox. My voice went out a little bit, but for some reason, I wasn't able to load websites like YouTube or Instagram or Chrome or really any other website. I was able to load up Google.com and I was able to search things on Google, but I wasn't able to actually load up any web pages, which I found really, really weird. Usually it's the opposite. Usually I'm able to load up web pages except Google for some reason, but now I was still able to load up Google, but I wasn't able to load any other apps, which I found really, really weird. So I don't know what that is. I kept getting this box, a security alert, and then it just basically aired out and wouldn't let me do anything else. So not really too sure what happened there. Maybe I'll fix it later to make an updated video, but even the Internet Explorer and even the whole entire just usability of this thing isn't really that bad. So, shout out to Microsoft for doing that. They really kind of made a timeless OS with it for sure at the end of the day. So I can't really fault Microsoft for doing that. So shout out to them for that. Another thing I want to note is that when you have all these different softwares coming out, and I deal with a lot of software throughout the day, it's really impressive to see the differences in sizes between certain softwares. Now, I did a tutorial not too long ago, I think, on how to install like Windows 95 on an Android or something, and I don't know if I put that out, maybe I put that out a long time ago, but these sizes of these softwares really aren't that big. Like with like Mac OS, that software is like 6 gigs, I think, like it's a massive version of software. Windows 10, I think, is like multiple gigs too. Like these things are massive softwares, and this Windows XP is like 500 to 600 megabytes. Like it's not even a gig, and this is a full-on operating system. And to think about that, people are still using this on a daily basis, most likely for business uses and all that, is pretty crazy. Like 500 to 600 megabytes for a full operating system. Now compared to things like Linux back in the day and all these ones, I'm sure they were all similar, but there's a lot of features built into that 600 megs. That's kind of a lot, to be honest. So it's also really cool to see the differences in the sizes of software and how many more features and capabilities are added into the newer versions of software than the older ones. So for sure, at the end of the day, that's a really interesting thing to note too. Now, as usual, I went through all the little features within Microsoft's, Windows XP and little things like that. One really interesting thing that kind of came to mind was actually on the My Documents, and just the documents in general. The whole entire layout is still very much the same, but on top of that, for some reason, the My Documents page looked almost just like the Mac OS's, Finder file thing, whatever the Finder page that is, the Finder app. And that was actually really surprising to me. I just remember that as I was going through, and now, it's still kind of the same, but they're kind of a little different too. But I would say this one looked more like the Mac OS one than it did to the Windows 10 one. But again, that's just me. What do I know? Now, I also went through some of the other little things too, like all the little features. I eventually did go through the games little toggle, and I went through Minecraft, which I found pretty crazy. Not Minecraft, Minesweeper. I really said Minecraft, and that was really cool too. Like, it's so weird to see different games like that from back in the day from stock and seeing how they perform now. And I actually didn't do that bad on Minesweeper, and it's very responsive. It's not really that slow, so that's really cool. I also went and did Paint as usual, and I pretty much tried it. It's hard to tell you because I was talking while I was also doing it, and it's hard to match up my audio now because obviously I wasn't recording the audio at the time, but I was just asking you guys what am I drawing, this and that. I eventually drew a bird on a tree. I know it's kind of hard to tell, don't have to make fun of me for my drawing and everything. I'm in art school right now, so you guys don't have to make fun of me about it. Just kidding, I'm not in art school. But then I eventually played the long lost pinball game that I'm sure a lot of you guys know and a lot of you guys love, 3D pinball, and I wasn't really too sure about the way to play the game. It kind of threw me off because I have not played this game in so long. I had to eventually look at the controls and everything, and what I can tell you about this game, it still holds up. One funny thing though is that even this pinball game is still pretty, popping in 2020. If you guys know, there's a musician, an artist, if you will, Lil Uzi Vert, in his mixtape or his album, he actually sampled or took some of the audio from this pinball game and put it in a song, which is so crazy. To think that this Windows XP game, just this game in and of itself, had that big of an impact is pretty crazy, that it's still being used in pop culture to this day. And for sure, at the end of the day, this game in and of itself, it didn't make Windows XP. I think the wallpaper is pretty much the biggest pop culture shift in software in general, and I think this specific image is one of the most popular images in the world. I could be mistaken, but this one for sure, this one was everywhere. And so pinball, I would say, is in the same league. When you think of Windows XP, I think most people think of the wallpaper and pinball, to be honest, maybe even Minesweeper, who knows. And then kind of, the end of it, there's really not too much more to hit on that, that I would personally know. Now, I didn't necessarily grow up with Windows XP like I stated. I kind of grew up with Windows 7 and even Windows 8 a little bit. But Windows XP, I had a weird machine, a side computer that had Windows XP on it. And for sure, at the end of the day, I think it's a super capable software still for a lot of people. But definitely if you can go to at least Windows 7, that one is probably the best version of Windows in general, I think, for what it brought and for how minimal it was and for how just capable it was. Now when you look at Windows 10, I like Windows 10 a lot, but it just seems like it's trying to combine a smartphone experience and a tablet experience and a desktop experience. With Windows 7, it was totally different. It felt so capable and it just felt like an actual machine, a professional type of machine. But now we look at it and it is a little bit different, but Windows XP at the end of the day is a software that I truly love. I think it's super important, especially now. And I just wish my audio was recorded when I recorded the first time instead of having to do it 3 more times after. But definitely at the end of the day, Windows XP, if you've never used it, you can obviously go and actually set up a VirtualBox yourself, and you can download an ISO file from Microsoft even, and even just plug and play from there. It's not too hard to set up a VirtualBox. So if you want to experience your own Windows XP on your device, whether that's a MacBook or Windows or whatever, you have the ability, which I would highly recommend you guys to do. So that is pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed this little walkthrough of this Windows XP, let me know by hitting that like button. Leave a comment in the comment section below. And last year I did the same video too with the Windows XP in 2019, and a ton of people liked it. And the fact of the matter is that Windows XP is turning 20 next year is seriously so crazy. Like I stated, a ton of you might actually be younger than this software, which is so insane. So again, another tangent, I'm sorry about that. Leave a comment like I said below, but definitely hit that subscribe button. That'll mean so much. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys to check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.